Hi there, I'm Ben Parsons, as you'll be able to see hopefully from my upload, and this is the first instalment of this week's task or set of questions in response to the reading and the viewing on Hesbondog, which I assume I'm pronouncing correctly, and Baker and Richard, Florida. I'll break it up, so I'll do a separate piece for each question so that it's easier for me to send it and upload it. First of all, the first question, what has become of Florida's vision of a new creative class? Well, Richard, Florida observed in 2002 that people's lifestyle choices were dictating their decisions rather than people moving to work or moving location for economic reasons. People were choosing locations, or creative workers were choosing tolerant or diverse locations, and hence the companies seeking that workforce were coalescing around those locations. The companies were coming to the workforce. Later in his bigthink.com video, he claimed his creative class, as he termed it, had expanded to 40 or 45 or 50% of the workplace in some areas, not only in the US, but across the West as well, elsewhere in the world. However, his analysis wasn't wholly positive. It came with caveats. He warned that the work of the creative class was exciting and liberating in some ways, divisive and stressful in others. This is back in 2002. He noted there was no social cohesion among members of the class, said it was virtually unaware of its own existence and thus unable to influence the course of the society it largely leads, or unable to consciously influence the course of that society. And those caveats anticipate the findings of Hesbondog and Baker, who note the highly ambivalent attitudes of creative workers to their work, what they call a complicated version of freedom. They refer to insecurity, a blurring of the lines of pleasure and obligation. They ask if autonomy and pleasure are actually tools of control, encouraging people in self-exploitation. Now, Florida's use of the word class, this is my personal response, I suppose, or my extrapolation from this, his use of the word class could unlock these findings. The negative side of that ambivalence that Hesbondog and Baker discover is linked directly to casualisation and movement towards longer hours, replaceability in the workplace. And they link this to de-recognition of the unions. And I suppose they mean de-recognition in the formal sense, in which the companies have to recognise unions in order for collective bargaining to take place, but also, I suppose, a lack of recognition by the workforce themselves. So Florida points out the lack of self-awareness of creative workers as a class. You could predict, or he might have been able to predict, the results. The creatives, he uses the word class, but they do not behave in the classic sense of a working class, or in the sense that Marx would have written about a working class. They haven't developed a consciousness of mutual interest. They haven't developed a tradition of combining into unions to negotiate collectively for better conditions, and losing that feature of what we think of as a traditional, possibly even now, but maybe out of date, working life. For example, the manufacturing sector would be an area you would expect to be more heavily unionised. Losing those features means that even in a post-industrial age, this digital age, the creative age that we're all looking at, in the workplace, it's a pre-industrial arrangement. It's redolent of the 18th century world of journeyman and piecework before trade unions and combination was legalised, before Marx. And with ad hoc combinations, one of their interviewees refers to one agreement that they managed to strike by clubbing together, but they don't seem to extrapolate this into a model for future negotiation And so, yeah, ad hoc combination, notable for its rarity and for the lack of confidence that the participants have in achieving a lasting impact. So what became of the creative class? It may be that the lure of autonomy and selling your own skills to suit your own ends, and the loss of, Hesmondhalgh refers to an effective attachment to the workplace, and I suppose that would include an attachment to your colleagues or a social bond with your colleagues, means creative workers do not necessarily identify with one another. I don't know if that's been tested, but for successful enforcement of collective bargaining arrangements would require solidarity, and the alienation, the isolation that people refer to in Hesmondhalgh and Baker's interviews might run counter to that. Those principles of solidarity might run counter to the notions of individual liberty and personal goals that the workers are trying to pursue. My analysis is they're recognisable as the digital media's proletariat, in Marx's terms. There's a reference to Miège's reservoir of labour, but they do not recognise themselves as actors in a Marxist class struggle, and as such their exploitation is inevitable. I was struck by Ursula Hughes's quote in Hesmondhalgh and Baker that by accepting poor conditions, workers were making bars for their own cages. So, with reference to the rallying cry of Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto, the creative workers of the world are not united, or they have not united, and they forsake that unity and the security and the economic and psychological security that comes with that, in exchange for the prize of self-organisation and autonomy, and whether that exchange is worth making or one that profits them as much as it does the people who they're working for, is another matter. But I'm not sure that ambivalence might underplay it. It sounds in Hesmondhalgh and Baker's research, sounds like most people are having quite a bad time